All right, folks. Well, welcome to another great Thursday evening Team 3 folks discussion. So we're continuing on this year's theme of building a winning referee team. So that started off with the major focus being the Ken Aston Cup earlier this year. We had Team 3 referees participate in 4 or 5 teams at the Cup, which was great to see. We wanted participation. And it's going forward. So it's all about focusing on what the customer needs. Understanding that the players, the coaches, they are our customers. Uh, sure, we have a lot of power, but we win when they win, um, and finding ways to do that. So, with that being said, this evening we get to have a discussion led by Phil Briggs. I'll let him give his credentials if he feels, but I've known him for ages as the section director of referee instruction. He really knows what he talks about. I love bringing him around. He's done a number of our law updates for us because he stays quite savvy on that. Um, and I heard from some of our Team 3 members that they really wanted to be here because Phil was here tonight. So, Phil, I really appreciate you doing this. And with that, I'll hand it over.
Oh, well, thank you. Nice intro. Tonight, Lewis and I talked a little bit about it. We're going to talk a little bit about doing upper level matches. I've kind of stolen quite heavily from the national course in that topic. Plus, I've added a few twists in for some misconduct stuff that I think is interesting. What I'd like to do is I've got some charts here, and we'd be doing some scenarios. But I'd like to keep it very much open, round table kind of discussion. So feel free to chime in with your thoughts, because I'll certainly be asking you some questions. Fair enough? Okay. Let me steal the desktop. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay, because I can't see anybody right now, just my desktop. Um, Okay, so what I want to talk about tonight is a little bit about managing these upper level matches, and we sometimes talk about our management technique as bending the laws. Can someone give me a shot at what they think bending the laws really means?
Well, in a certain sense, these are practically young adults rather than young kids. So, there's kind of gamemanship that you um, let go to a point, I guess, whereas in a U10 game, you may not.
Okay, so that's a good start, John. Anybody else?
I would say more of wait and see how things turn out. As far as the younger kids, you would just stop and inform them of what they're doing. But with the older kids, you just wait and see what happens.
Okay, so we're talking about a little bit of management, but when I talk about the phrase bending the laws, what does that mean to you? What
How
about you?
about
Go
how
ahead.
about a judicious interpretation of the laws in a given situation?
Okay, fair enough. I like that. Anybody else want to add to that?
Well, so you watch a college match, you watch uh, a professional match. They don't call everything. So is that bending the laws because they see it, but it's not enough to call it?
It may be part of bending the laws. Yeah. Let me
Not calling trifling fouls.
right. So let me talk about a couple of things here. What I want to talk about tonight and kind of the theme that's going through some of the scenarios will be there's a number of complexities involved. And we have to kind of juggle that with our maintenance of flow and control, our management of the match. And also, I hopefully we can develop an appreciation for these sorts of things, knowing the laws and knowing how they should be applied. And you've kind of touched upon a little bit of that in your comments so far. So, spirit of the game. Let me throw a couple things at you. Anybody have their own definition of what spirit of the game is? I'm not hearing any comments.
I
Okay,
would
what,
say it's that right balance where everybody enjoys themselves and nobody gets hurt.
I like that. I like that. Cindy's on. Okay, I like that. Let's take a look at what the law book says. And this is a quote from the law books, the laws of the game. And they explicitly reference the spirit of the game. And the thing I want you to take notice of is the last part of the phrase, which is opinion of the referee who has the discretion to take appropriate action within the framework of the laws of the game. And from my point of view, that's what bending the laws really means, is that you have a framework and you have some decisions to make within the framework. And so your application of the laws is then based on your interpretation of what's going on in the field at the time. And that's what I mean bending. Bending is not breaking. Too often we get into discussions where referees have, ignored the laws. How many of you have seen a referee pull a penalty kick out to the outside, call it near the edge of the penalty area, but it's inside, and pull it back to the outside? Anybody seen that?
yeah,
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not bending the laws. Okay, so what the laws are instructing us to do are we have discretion, but we have to work within the framework of the laws, the framework it allows us. And there's a lot of latitude in that framework, and that's bending the laws. The other thing the law tells us is the following question. What would football want or expect? Now, that last question is interesting because how does that apply to our organization? Because you got to think about that in terms of what would football within AYSO want or expect. So how does that color your decisions?
Oh, it has to be age appropriate.
Age appropriate is part of it, yes. What else is it? What is the expectation of our organization?
Fun, fair, and safe.
That's part of our jobs as a referee, but what about our organization? What we have these 6 tenets we live by. So there's an expectation within those tenets, right? Okay. So I want you to think about that for a little bit about it because we're going to talk a little bit about that. In one
Phil,
of the,
if I may interrupt real quick,
sure.
you have some Zoom control box in your top right corner of your screen
Oh,
that
sorry.
blocks out for us.
Apologize.
It's all right. There we go.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I was using it to see the names of people who are here. So
Yeah, it's helpful.
yeah. Okay. I'll rely on my memory as best I can.
Yeah, when I teach, I have 2 computers and 3 screens, but I know
Yeah.
that's a luxury.
Yeah. Okay. So what are other expectations that AYSO has of us? Yeah, fair, safe, and fun is one of them, but what else?
All 6 philosophies, Phil. So we've got to maintain positive coaching, for example, and
For example, yeah.
good statesmanship, good sportsmanship on the kids. Those 2 are important. And then player development is also sometimes we're teaching as well as reffing, depending on
Right.
the players.
And that comes back to the age appropriate remark that was made earlier, right? Um, so let's talk about that. So our role as referees is we need to integrate player actions with the laws of the game and with our reading of the game. And it's kind of come up, it came up early in our discussion how to apply the laws for that match at that time. And we talked a little bit about this, the difference between knowing the laws and knowing how to best apply the laws for the good of the game. When I talk about the good of the game, I'm talking about the good of our game. We are not professionals. So let's take a little look at that and see about let's talk a little bit about the latitude we have in addressing matches. So here's a scenario for you. It's an under 16 girls match. Player number 10 on the red team, who is very skilled, best player on the field, has beaten the D and is soloing in on the goalkeeper on a breakaway. No other player, either attacker or defender, except for the goalkeeper, is within 20 yards of her. So she enters the penalty area. So now you've got a picture in your mind, right? You've got an attacker just hitting at the edge of the penalty area with just the goalkeeper between her and the goal. The goalkeeper moves forward to meet her. Red 10 feints, world-class feint, hard to her right. Goalkeeper bites on the feint and starts to step that way. Red then cuts back under control to her left, closely passing the goalkeeper and headed for the goal. Goalkeeper, realizing she's been beaten, desperately reaches out and grabs the jersey of the attacker. The attacker loses control of the ball and it rolls over the goal line, not a goal. You're the referee. What are you going to do with this? What is this?
While the goal, issue a caution, kickoff.
There's no goal.
Rolls over
the goal line and it's not a goal.
Penalty kick, yellow card.
What's the yellow card for?
For a dog show.
This is not one of the dog shows you can reduce to yellow. It's not a challenge for the ball.
So red.
So what are you going to do with this?
It's send off and a penalty kick.
Send off on a penalty kick. That's what the laws require, right? It's pretty clear. I tried to be pretty clear about this. This is a dog show event, okay? And so the question is, what are you going to do about it in a U16 match or 16U match?
Hey, Phil, I'll chime in with something.
Sure.
So I was actually watching a referee do a game where almost this exact scenario happened. And the goalkeeper that did this was on a team that was already losing 6-0. It was a horrible game. And if the referee would have given the red card for the obvious dog show, which it by letter of the law it should be, it would not have helped the game. It would have just gotten a lot worse. We already had an out of control coach on the losing team. So the referee just chose to caution and award a penalty kick.
Okay.
And I applauded his decision at the time.
Okay. That's certainly an option. But what I'm trying to develop here, and I appreciate those thoughts, Tim, keep them in your mind, okay? So we have a dog show situation here, and the laws, so the laws identify this as a dog show, not a challenge for the ball, punishment's a send-off, and a penalty kick. But we're talking U16s here. So let me throw some context in for you a little bit. Suppose this happened in the 10th minute of play. Does that make any difference to any decision you might make?
Theoretically, it shouldn't, but
Yeah, but you're going to set a precedent if you don't do something at the beginning of the game.
Okay, I like that answer, Kristen. Keep going.
You either warn her
It's a dog show event.
and have a long talk, or you ask, I don't know, maybe ask the coach to replace her and just leave her on the field and put somebody else in the goal. I don't know.
Okay. If you do not send this player off, what is going to happen to match control?
It's going to be
You're
way
gonna
out.
lose control.
So let's add a
you
little more.
might have the opposing coach might be ballistic. I mean, you
You
think you're
think?
protecting one side and you're flipping out the other.
Right. So you got to ask yourself, what's fair to the game? What does the game expect? What does the game expect for this type of event? Okay, let's add a little more context. Suppose it's the first game of the season.
Hmm.
That change anything?
Well, I'd have to say the first game of the season, sorry, I'm eating, is a more like a teaching game than an actual game.
At U16?
Well, it's a refresher game.
Think about yourself on the field. First game of the season, 10th minute, you have a dog show event. Most of you are going to pull that red card out, I think, because that's what the law requires.
I'd probably pull it out anyway.
Okay. Let's add a little more context. What if, based on comments overheard during player equipment inspection, you believed it was the first time that goalkeeper had ever played that position?
Uh,
Well, they should still know better than to pull somebody else's jersey. I mean, you've been playing for how long? How long have they been actually playing the game? It might be just be the goalkeeper, but you're not supposed to pull jerseys, hair, shorts,
Okay.
I
But keep in
think it
mind
would depend.
this keeper just got faked out, and it is kind of a desperation grab, so it's more of a reflex than a conscious, I'm going to do this. But still, it's a dog show event, right?
And my decision would still be a caution.
Okay.
And the more you add to it, the more it becomes a caution. And you eliminate so many other factors that go into that decision, such as the temperament, whether you know the players, you know the coaches. Is it a highly contested game? Were there problems at player check-ins? There's so many other things that go into your question, Phil.
Yep, I know
But
that.
for me, I'm not going to a straight red card on it.
Okay. Okay. Let me help you out here, David. Let me pull them the next thing.
I know that was coming.
So now we get back into what if during the early minutes of the match, you kind of believe this is the very first soccer match that players ever played. Then you start thinking about what does our organization think about this?
Well, there you go. You still have another teachable moment.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't really care what the organization had to think about it at this point. The right thing to do is to have that discussion with the player and ensure that it doesn't happen again. But the wrong thing is to send her off. Although I appreciate the need for consistency, there's also the need for sportsmanship and to let these kids play.
Right. The thing I really like that thought process. The thing I'm kind of leading to is that you think about these kids playing this game. How long is your playing season in terms of numbers of games for the older kids?
I don't know, 10 maybe?
Around
10
around 10 games, right?
2.5 months.
Yeah, it's around 10 games, right?
Yeah.
So first game of the season, early in the first game, if you were to send her off, she's missing essentially for 2 games. That's 20% of the season for a brand new player.
Yeah.
Well, then also brand new player, she probably won't want to come back.
Yeah, there you got that, don't you? And let me throw in the final little piece of context. Oops. What does this tell you?
Good
Compassion.
sportsmanship.
Compassion.
But in addition for sportsmanship, what does it also tell you as a referee in terms of game management?
That the player gets it.
It's the right thing to do, and the other team recognized it.
Bingo. Bingo. Yeah. So now in terms of game management, you're not going to expect a big kerfluffle from the other team if you make a decision that's not a send-off. So the whole purpose of this first scenario was to kind of get you thinking about the sorts of things that you've been discussing about what's appropriate for our 16U, 19U kind of players. And as David mentioned, there's a whole lot of other factors that just kind of roll into your decisions. And I didn't mention any of them in this thing. I just wanted to hit you with this scenario a little bit blind. I hope that kind of gets everybody on the right page.
But with each line it progressed. The red card referee was more the villain. I expected one more line where we're kicking puppies or something.
The interesting thing is this is a scenario based on an experience I had about 10 years ago. So
What was the outcome?
the outcome was I talked to the player, we had the penalty kick, and life went on.
Okay.
Yeah, I had no problem. I didn't even issue a caution, by the way, for this because it's very clear that what purpose would that have served in this situation?
So is that called bending the laws?
That's called believing that that wasn't a true dog so situation, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I bent it really hard there. But the latitude is there in terms of we have to decide, is it dog so, and is it what does this game demand at this point? What is the expectation of football for this particular event for this player at this time? And my belief is that a send-off was not warranted.
In my opinion, I think that last item really set the tone because up until then, I was thinking, okay, considering the defensive team and what's going on with them, but you also got to consider the other team. It's only fair you consider them. And until you had this, that the other team was willing to accept that, that really seals it for me.
Yes, it did, because what happened was the player hit the ground, bounced, looked at me and said, "Ref, she didn't know what she's doing. It's okay." So I'm good with that, and that worked. So what is it?
I have a quick question though. So
Oh.
as it progresses, it gets as you start missing some of those, then it becomes, I mean, like you said, you stepped it to a certain way. A lot of this, sometimes you won't step that way. You may not know, you may have an aggressive person. So it just, in the end, it depends. Even this scenario with two different changes might change your whole outcome, right?
Absolutely. Depends, as David mentioned earlier, game temperature, temperament, skill level of the players, if there's any malicious intent, that sort of stuff, that's going to change your decision-making process totally.
Would you also weigh in whether it was a playoff game?
Should you? Not hearing any comments.
Yeah. Because then you're not at the first game of the season. You're not, even if you're a first year player, you've played theoretically close to 10 games. The stakes are much higher. So I would say that does, I mean, whether in the end you make that choice or not, it does change the dynamics of the scenario.
Absolutely. So each scenario is taken on a per game, per time, per player basis. It's not a one size fits all. So if we're going to make decisions out on the field, what's our foundation as referees? What is the foundation we have to making decisions?
Laws of the game.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
first foundation.
Pretty obvious, isn't it? Knowing the laws. You can't do anything without knowing the laws.
So I
And
got
what is it
that.
about the laws that you need to know?
Application.
Okay, I like that. So it's the latitude to sanction, right? You get to decide on a contact foul whether it's careless, reckless, or excessive. That's up to you. You have that latitude, or whether so it can range from incidental contact to something quite severe, depending on what goes on with some of these other factors in the game, skill level, etc. And that leads into the severity of the sanction because it could range from just a simple free kick to a free kick plus caution or a send-off involved. So again, you have that spectrum that you can deal with. And your goal as referee is to best support the spirit of the game, which is let them play, but let them play fairly and safely. Closeness to play is another foundation. Why is that a foundation for your decision making?
You get more information and it's more accurate.
Yeah, you get to see what's going on, right? So
You
what
get-
are your elements of position that you're looking for?
yeah, and credibility, right?
Credibility increases the closer you are to play, but being close to play doesn't mean you can see it. So what are you looking for in terms of your positioning?
Angle.
Angle. Being able to see and being able to see through play and hopefully see your AR who can give you a little help, right? Okay, so now let's segue a little bit. Talk about this. When does an action rise to the level of a caution or send off? In other words, when does an action rise to the level of something that you consider to be misconduct? And so what are some of the factors and triggers that you look for to tell you that something is more than just an ordinary foul or an incidental contact of some sort?
Temperature of the game.
Temperature of the game is part of it, yeah.
Well, if it's a safety thing, I think that makes it real easy.
Okay, well, defined safety is a pretty broad thing. Give me
Well,
some
I mean,
specifics.
when you're talking studs up or, I know the term not playing the ball, but I mean, when it's not careless or reckless, when it's above that
Okay.
level.
Okay, so you're talking about the force and the mode of contact.
Yeah.
Okay. What are some other triggers?
How many times they've done something?
Yeah, that might be a trigger.
Also, where the contact was.
Where do you define what where means?
You come in for a slide tackle if you see the cleats on an ankle or in a knee joint.
Okay, so you mean where on the player
Yes,
as opposed to where on the field.
correct.
Okay.
Was the player expecting a contact?
Okay, another trigger. Yeah.
I'm always looking at what led up to it.
Okay, fair enough. I like that.
Yeah,
So you're
paybacks.
what else?
Can I manage the game if I don't sanction this?
Now we're talking. Is this something required for match control? So I put
Time
a
left. How much time is left in the game would be something for me too.
yep.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about those, but what about player expectations? Does that factor into your decision-making process?
Always it has to.
Okay. So
And
yeah. So if a player in a 16 or 19U match, as the other team is getting set to restart play, kicks the ball away, is he expecting to get caution for that?
No, but he should be.
No, but you can talk to him and tell him not to do it again. And if he does it again, then you would caution him.
Possibly a warning. What if it's late in the match and the match temperature is very high? Are you going to give him the luxury of a warning?
No, he knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah. So player expectations fall into that. Uh, the last comment on there has to do with the whole concept of dissent. And so that's what I want to spend just a little bit of time on. When does actions that could be interpreted as dissent rise to the level where you're going to deal with it as misconduct? What are your cues? What is your judgment? What are the things you use to tell you?
loudness and who it was directed toward.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The duration of it and whether the player responds to your request to stop.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. And so if he doesn't stop, then he's triggered your own personal standard for it rising to the level of a caution, perhaps.
Well, if it's personal, it's, do not pass go. So
Well, define personal for me, John.
you're an idiot, I mean, something that comes direct at you, and I'd say almost like a noun, because other things could be, if someone just said that's the third time, then maybe it just depends, but being called a fool or something to that, like, looking at you, directed at you. So
How many
What-
times do they have to tell us, do we need glasses?
Or to say you're the worst referee I've ever seen.
Right.
I've been told that.
Well, that's
Yeah.
personal.
I think we all have.
Okay. What if it's done so only you and he hear that?
well, I would say if it's eye contact with, like, I mean, if it's walking away and then it's okay, maybe it's time to walk it off. But there's ways of showing aggression, and that's usually eye to eye, face to face type of speech.
During the game, I've had a player yell out, "This referee doesn't know what he's doing." But I let it go and had a talk with him at the next stoppage.
Okay.
That was a 14U game.
Okay. Did it work?
It did until after the game when he gave another player a shove in the back during the handshake.
Okay. What happens if you have a player walks by you and just so you and he are involved in this conversation, and so it's not public, says, "Hey, ref, you really blew that effing call."
Is at the end of the game, end of the match?
Let's say it's in the first half of the match.
Well, I'm certainly going to have a conversation, and I'm certainly at halftime. I'm going to involve his coach in it.
Okay.
That's the first time, assuming you don't have all of the other inflaming factors that could have gone into it leading up to it.
No, I'm assuming this is coming out of where you're not really expecting this.
So I mean, for a kid of that age and not making it so much a noun, it's more of an adjective. I would kind of take it as I'd like to think that, oh, you think you're talking at a schoolyard rather than you directed a F-bomb at me. So I think the conversation of it, but I think the private language is less of an issue for someone of that age than I think it's the call portion that not the effing call, but oh, you blew that call. Like, I think the adjective doesn't mean as much, especially at this age.
Okay. So I like the thought process because I want you thinking about this. Now let's change the dynamic a little bit. Suppose it now becomes public. It's the same thing, but now it's public. Everybody hears it.
You got to take care of that.
Okay, how are you taking care of it?
Well, you can't use foul language on the field. So I would say do a red and make him sit down for the rest of the game. I mean, because if he's going to start with the foul language and he gets away with it, somebody else is going to do it.
Okay.
So I would lean away from the red just because I think that I call me hopeful. I would like to think that the yellow puts them on spot enough that they know that any other time they've cost themselves and their team.
John, I have a
know.
question for you, John. So what were you giving him a caution for?
Oh, it's still just, well, so then I would say it's dissent
Sure.
and not abusive language.
Okay,
That's that. So that's how I would parlay
bend the
it, I
rule,
guess is the right. Yeah.
your
For this age.
interpretation of the rule.
Yeah.
Good.
I would say it's not an attack on me or the abusive language portion. Yeah, that's how I would do it.
Okay, fair
Yeah,
enough.
one thing I usually ask myself is whether I believe another referee should have to deal with that. Because if they get away with it, they're learning they can get away with it. And yeah, it's it just leads to further referee abuse. So that's, even if I can take it, right? If I feel I can handle it, um, if I'm thinking about somebody coming up, they're on a 16U match, they haven't quite taken the national course yet. Maybe they're going to get intimidated by that, and they would doubt themselves away from taking that course and advancing, even if not permanently, even if for just a couple of years. I think is that something another referee wants to have to handle, because I've seen a few referees decide, really gifted referees on the national track, just face attacks and realize, no, I'm done. This just isn't for me. So
So Lewis, I'm curious. I agree with you, but what if you were to instead say, if I heard what I thought I heard, most referees would be giving you a send-off instead of caution for dissent. Would that satisfy you, or that's not far enough?
so I lean hardly on the three C's for national referees. Um, I definitely believe in the courage aspect. I find it hard to defend the choice for a caution when the offensive, insulting, abusive language is right there.
Okay,
Not
good to
That's not
know.
to say that I'm insisting this is a send off, but um, if I'm backing down to yell, or am I just doing nothing? Am I not doing nothing? But is there no misconduct? Am I sending a very clear message that this will not continue? And sometimes, the players, oh, no, I'm sorry, Arif, I'm sorry, right? You can tell it was an outburst, and you pause. Okay, look, and then you have that talk you're leading into. So but I do think courage to do the right thing is, or
So
yeah.
so Lewis, is the F word the trigger for you, or the loud, like, same thing, drop the F word? Is it the word? That would be my question, because I would take it as not so much abusive language, because it was directed at once again, I'm an adjective guy. Like, it's not the noun, it's the description, it's the course description of the call. So I'm just wondering if it's the word, or because if you do the same thing without the word, would it be a red card? And I mean, then it's not offensive or abusive. So I get why that would step it down
Mhm.
for you or for anyone.
Yeah, the offensive, insulting, or abusive language and or actions are that falls under the sending off offenses. So that's what puts it eligible for that for me.
Well, I mean, so this happened to my son was coaching a team, and the player actually swore at himself because he was mad about what he did, not well, and was a star player. And there was no one within 10 yards. He didn't direct it at anyone. But the referee was very religious. So therefore he swore. And I'm like, wait, he's giving it. And that's where I learned that, oh, if you swear, there's no latitude in the law unless you decide that you didn't necessarily hear that. And then you can caution them for the dissent or something like that. But if you're going to say that you heard a swear word, then the law doesn't give you any latitude.
Yeah, I think if we pulled red cards for every time we heard a little swear word, we'd have
Uh,
a
Yeah,
whole lot more red
that's
cards given out.
yes, I know.
No kids
But
playing.
what we're hearing here are different levels of acceptance for what constitutes abusive language, and that's always going to be the case. We all have our own different thresholds. What I'm looking at, there's a comment that Lewis made that you just need to think about is, are you leaving a mess? If you don't deal with this, are you leaving a mess for the next referee? And the other comment is, as we get hopefully younger and younger referees into the mix, a lot of them are going to have grown up with this kind of language being the norm. Because you think about if you walk across the high school campus these days, you hear that a lot. So, more things stay the same, they change to paraphrase that. I like the discussion. It demonstrates that we have different thresholds, but there's some very good thoughts. There's some very good thought processes, and that's really what I was trying to dig into, was your thought process, and I'm liking it.
Well, Phil, can I just add one thing? Because I like Lewis's comment too about not leaving the next ref in a bind, but you
Yep.
don't want to leave yourself in a bind for the rest of that game. And that to me is the more paramount one that I'm thinking about at the time. If I don't do this now, what am I telling them and how am I going to control it later on? Because I have to be consistent.
Yep.
Well, we also have ways of dealing with this without issuing a card. If you believe, if your reading of this is that a publicly viewed discussion with the player will take care of it, and it's early in the match, great. If not, okay.
I think what's really important is that any of those options could be used effectively, but the one option that I think is important to avoid is pretending you didn't hear it. Because I think that just leads to more problems. You can address it by joking comment with them about, hey, watch that, or you could choose any of your tools, but I think ignoring it is a problem.
I think we can all agree that it has to be addressed at some level.
And it may be different if there's kids on the sideline, like a family that you're like, oh, let me nip this because of who's around.
Yeah, well, yeah, there are those other factors, as David mentioned earlier, aren't there? Okay, some of the factors to consider I've kind of listed out here, but these are some of the things that I jotted down that kind of influence how you're going to make decisions about what you're going to do for any kind of event or occurrence that happens on the field. The first thing you have to do is be able to see what's going on. And we talked a little bit about that earlier. I don't want to dwell on that. You guys know that. But the reading the match portion I always find very interesting, because there's a whole bunch of factors in what constitutes reading a match. I've listed some out here. You can probably think of some others, but they're all factors that need to be kind of rolling around in the back of your mind as you blow that whistle and decide what you're going to do to this player at this time in this game. And I think we touched upon some of these things along the way. So that said, I want to do a couple of scenarios. What I want you to be thinking about are these 5 questions, or 6 or 7, however many questions are here, as you talk about what the scenario is. Is it appropriate for the referee to interfere right now, which means typically blow the whistle usually? What is the team attempting to accomplish? I'm not going to worry about objective of the game or any of that stuff. Gamesmanship or misconduct? What factors did the referee read? What factors should the referee have read? And what are the points of the law that should be considered? So we're going to start actually with this one. You can all read it, but basically it's a 16U match, final game of the season, championship, 3 minutes left. 1-0 score in favor of red. Red team's pressing full team attack. They're all across the halfway line with the referee close to play. Good referee, good on the referee. One of the red midfielders just clangs the ball down towards the goalkeeper. As the ball flies high in the air, 2 red forwards sprint after the ball, even though it's obvious the goalkeeper is going to get possession before they're even in the neighborhood. The defending goalkeeper safely collects the ball. Everybody else is at halfway line, including the referee, because they're expecting a long punt back. However, those 2 forwards are kind of headed down to the goalkeeper and stop immediately in front of him as he moves to punt the ball. Your lead AR, who's level with the goalkeeper where he's supposed to be, sees him stop, says something, but he doesn't hear what it is. And then the referee, the red forward, attempts to impede the referee, or impede the keeper getting rid of the ball. The referee yells to the forward to move, no response. Then the blue goalkeeper yells "move" at the top of his lungs and pushes the player with the ball. At which point the assistant referee signals for a foul. So what are you going to do with that? What do we got here? So think about what everybody get the picture? Does everybody have the picture on this? Yes? Okay. So you have two forwards down by a goalkeeper, the only ones in the neighborhood. So is it appropriate for the referee to interfere?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, you have to stay out of the way of the punter, the goalkeeper when they punt. You're not allowed to be that close to the goalkeeper when
Okay.
they're trying to throw the ball out, punt the ball out.
Okay. So we have a potential infraction right there, right?
Right.
What else we got?
And a potential blowout with pushing the guy with the ball.
Yep. So we have a goalkeeper pushing one of the players with the ball.
Well, I
So-
not as if I caught the whole scenario, but didn't the AR have their flag up for a foul, or was that
The air after the goalkeeper pushes the player with the ball, then the AR's flag comes up.
Okay. So right there, you could stop. I mean, that's the perfect reason. Even if you didn't see something, and you can talk to the AR to see what they saw beforehand.
Well, yeah, no. The implication is the referee saw it because the referee told the players to move.
Okay.
So there's an implication that the referee saw the interference with the goalkeeper. But as referees, what do we want to do? We hesitate to make those kind of calls. Why?
Change the outcome of the game.
Well, if you're going to make a call, you're going to have to call the first foul, which is the fact that they were stopping him from putting the ball back in play, because you couldn't turn around and award the red team for not obeying the laws of the game. That would then cause the foul by the goalkeeper.
Correct. You've got that whole time sequence that leads to those kind of discussions. But as referees, why are we reluctant to call those kind of impeding the goalkeeper or interfering with the goalkeeper kind of infractions?
Sometimes I think you think the keeper has the latitude and the ability to move out of the way and to release the ball or to move back a little bit. But for me, that's a caution to the players who are attempting to block the keeper's punt, not only for attempting to block it, but for not observing your instructions. And it's an indirect free kick to the keeper.
Okay. Okay. I agree with you. That's what most of us would do. But what I was getting at was most of us referees hesitate to make that call because we want to keep the ball in the goalkeeper's hands as much as we can.
We want to keep the ball moving. So why do we want to stop
Right.
it out?
Right. Which is why the referee's yelling "move" as opposed to blowing the whistle.
Right.
But
And
Phil,
with all the players,
the idea of rewarding the keeper or not taking something away from the keeper, taking away a punt, requiring him to punt off the ground assumes he didn't do anything to deserve that. He did. He's pushing back with the ball. So now, you don't get that benefit.
Right. But so you're going to blow your whistle, but what are you going to do? What were the red players trying to do, by the way? What was their purpose for doing this?
Stop the keeper from punting.
Which is
delay
delay.
Mhm.
Why are they wanting to delay?
because they're
Because they
down
want to
one,
win.
they're up 1-0.
And there ain't much time left, right?
No.
So their purpose is delay. So we have to deal with this mess. So how many of you are going to I've heard some of you talk about awarding the indirect free kick to the keeper because of the first infraction. Are you going to do anything with the goalkeeper?
Yes, I think you need to address both of them.
I think it would be depending on how hard he pushed for the ball. Doesn't give us that. You could just talk to him. But if you then sit there and write something up, then red still gained an advantage because you're taking the time away. It's a typical AYSO game where you don't have any time to add.
Okay.
My thing would be,
I
did the ball go out of the area when they were pushing the player?
Okay.
Because then
What
that would be a handling, right?
Well, you could have a handling, but if he's pushing the player, he's also striking the player as well. So you get to pick whether if he's outside there, it's handling or striking, right? They both have the same consequence.
Yes.
Phil, isn't part of the problem is because the referee's at the halfway line and didn't supervise what was going on down at the goal in the first place?
Oh,
you.
so you think a referee might have been more proactive?
Somebody should have been.
Okay. So now, what did the referee read?
The
Referee's
game.
the problem.
I mean, he or she read I mean, they were doing that long punts most of the game. So I don't really have a problem with where she was.
Okay. Okay. So the referee's reading long punt, but you still got two players closing in on the goalkeeper. So what should the referee have read?
That they were in a position to encroach and to delay the restart and have eye contact with the AR and ask sort of for the AR's assistance to keep an eye on what's going on down there as she heads down to the field to get to be in the area where the ball's going to land.
Okay. Except, you know, think about the scenario. The scenario is long ball gets launched toward the keeper. Clearly going to go to the keeper before anybody gets there. So everybody except the two forwards is kind of stop near the halfway line, including the referee. But you still got these two. As a referee, you're thinking, why are those two players still bearing down on the goalkeeper? And so don't you need to be asking yourself, is this something I need to worry about?
Yeah.
Possibly, but you have an AR down there that will keep an eye on that stuff.
Okay.
And she better be fast if they do. I mean, if that scenario doesn't play out and the ball gets launched and you're, halfway between the center line and the penalty area, you very well could have a problem getting to where your next place is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that the conundrum? So how as a team and doing a win-win team, how do you deal with that? And
I
that's
mean,
something and that's something you
understanding.
talk about in the pregame?
It could be. You can't really cover every situation in a pregame.
True. True.
I think, Phil, you hit on, you need to be suspicious. What are those players doing?
Yeah.
And you can't just be hanging out at the halfway line. You have to compromise and get closer to where they are, make sure that the keeper's able to clear the ball safely. And if that puts you a little bit behind, then thank goodness for good ARs.
Yep. And if you're down there and you think now if you're down if you're following those two red players in, you're taking a risk in your positioning. Okay. If nothing happens, you're in a very compromised position when play goes again, right?
Right.
Okay. But if something happens, you're actually in pretty good position to deal with it. So that's the balancing act that you need to take as a referee. Every position is a risk. You just need to weigh the consequences. So I like the discussion on this. So it's one of those kind of vague scenarios where you have lots of options and you have to decide how much of a compromise you want to make. The other thing playing into this is, and I'll be blunt, 3 minutes left in a match. The referee may be exhausted as well.
Oh, sure.
And how does that influence your decision making?
Negatively.
And if the referee actually ends up stopping the game to go down and have a talk and award that indirect free kick, you could always add time on the clock to compensate.
If you have the ability to add time.
Yeah. How often do we add time?
Not in AYSO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
mean,
take it more than I probably should. Because
yeah,
I like to tell people, because I think it calms sidelines, like when things happen.
yeah. But sometimes we don't have the luxury of adding time. But hopefully we have the luxury of adding a minute or two if we can. Okay, let's kind of progress on here a little bit. Let's look at this one. This is just a video clip, but I want you to tell me what you see. Okay, what do you see?
Frustrated player.
Okay, frustrated player. I like that. What did he do?
Pushed and then expressed himself.
So he committed an offense, and then he banged the ball off the ground. Could this be considered a form of dissent?
Absolutely.
Okay. So but we just have this snapshot. So suppose this were early in the match, in the first few minutes of the match, and this is the first time you've blown your whistle. How do you deal with that?
And probably at this level, deal it with a warning.
Okay. Anybody have any other comments?
You have to deal with this dissent. If you don't, it's only going to get worse. So if you're not going to issue a card, you've got to make a very public admonishment of this player so everyone sees that you don't want to see any more of this.
Okay. So this is the first time you've blown your whistle, but this happened. So you think you need to deal with it? I agree with you, by the way, Tim. But you think you need to deal with it, but you don't need to go all the way to a formal caution for dissent? Yes, no?
For me, I would not give a caution this early. I would just try to deal with it publicly.
Okay, cool. Anybody have any other comments? I like that.
I would say if this is the first time you blew the whistle and the player's that frustrated, maybe you should have been blowing your whistle more.
True.
Good point, Cindy or Kristen.
Think about that. Yes. So did this happen because of something we didn't do or something we did do, you know? So again, you begin to start thinking about factors. So am I seeing the game? Am I seeing the game? Why is he so frustrated with me?
Yeah,
It could have been because he broke up his girlfriend the night before, but it's we've got to ask the question that was just asked.
Yeah,
Now
well,
let's change the context a little bit. Suppose we're late in the first half and you've already had to speak to this player 2 or 3 times about his play.
well,
Now, how
then,
do you deal with that?
and then he would definitely get a card. I mean, maybe he needs to sit for a little bit, cool his jets down.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we can arrange the sit unless they have monitored subs, but certainly dealing with this is a little more than perhaps a simple talking to, right?
Yes.
If this is in AYSO, well, this is 16U. If
This
it
is a
were like 14U, I'd probably during the quarter break or something jog over and have a little talk with his coach about trying to settle his player down.
Okay. Could you do that at 16U at some point?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Now, suppose a little more context. Suppose instead of being the end of the first half, this is the late in the game, like 2 or 3 minutes left, and the red player's team is losing by a goal, say, but this is the first time you've had any issue with him. But it's a very hot game right now, though.
By that time in the game, me personally, I'd be scared that I'd be ready to give him a card anyway. So like that, I might short circuit myself by saying, there's tension. I have to, even though it's the first time, I want it to be the last time before the end of the game.
Okay. So there's more factors that you have to deal with, right? Any other comments? Tim, how are you
This
going to deal with
player,
it?
maybe this player is giving you the opportunity to just calm things down and slow things down for a little bit if the game's really hot right at that moment.
So you could use this to your advantage, maybe.
Sure.
So how are you going to do that? What are you going to do, Tim?
If the game's been really hot, there's been a lot of fouls called and such, it's probably a good time for a card.
Okay.
But, there's a lot of context here, but definitely at least take the time to slow things down and get everybody to settle down a little bit.
Okay.
And
I
maybe
like
a
that.
caution is what is needed to settle things down. It's hard for me to say not knowing the game.
Okay. So there are other factors you'd have to deal with. If there were a lot of fouls, I'm saying this is a close game, temperature's high, so there's probably a lot of contact. Suppose it was a lot of fair contact, not a lot of fouls, but a lot of fair contact. So the temperature's high because of that, and there's a lot riding on this game, and this happens, and this is the first time you've dealt with him. You're still going to a caution? Does the game need it?
I might because it's usually in the last 5 minutes of a tightly contested game when the descent gets worse and worse and worse if you haven't dealt with it.
Okay.
And so maybe this is a really good time to strongly deal with it, to rein things in for the rest of the game. Maybe.
Okay. Fair enough. Anybody have any other comments?
Yes, what if you've already cautioned him for something else? Then it would be a send-off.
Right. Are you okay? That wasn't part of it. This was the first time he was causing a problem here, but let's add that little extra thing to it. Suppose he's already sitting on a caution and this happens.
Well, I mean, first of all, if the first caution was for this, then, that's a different thing. But anyway,
Let's
if it
suppose
was,
the first caution was for just a really late tackle.
Oh, I'll chime in again. Why not? So I might well want to consider trying to use humor at this point. Honestly, I want to settle things down, so slow things down, and then I might even say to the player, "You really want me to send you off right now? You need to settle down. You're sitting on a yellow. Take it
Yeah.
easy, dude." It depends on whether you can have a conversation with this player or not.
Okay. I like that. But keep in mind also, and it's a comment that Lewis made earlier, as referees, we need to have the courage to give that second caution if it needs to be given.
We do, but we have a lot of latitude with this particular caution.
Yes,
I
we do.
think if he's done something to a player before, a tackle that you said that was enough to get a caution, and then he shows this kind of temperament, you've got a problem. And I think that that's only going to escalate if and somebody can get hurt.
Okay, fair enough. But keep in mind, we're late in the game. We're just a couple minutes left, close game, and it means a lot to these players. So is this a player being malicious or just a player frustrated with how the game's going? Again, I wasn't there. I don't know. I can't read this. But these are some of the things that would be coming up when you see it in a circumstance like this during a game. I like these comments. Let's move on a little bit. I'm going to skip these because we're basically running out of time, and go to the next video scenario because I think it's
Yeah,
cool.
that's a good plan.
So here's the next video. Watch carefully. You're going to see a dark player and a white player have an issue. Coming up right here. Read the game. What's going to happen?
That's a card, ref.
Okay. So what did we just see?
Foul by red, not called, not signaled, and then retaliation.
Retaliation.
Yeah. So
But he's
what
talking to the one player. He should be talking to both players.
okay. Please don't ask me why the referee was in the position he was in, but because I don't know. But what did we saw? We saw a foul and a retaliation. What did the referee read?
Only the retaliation, not as a retaliation.
Yeah, he apparently read that the first contact was okay. Because the foul occurred and the ball changed possession. So it's not like it's an advantage situation or anything like that. So what should the referee have read?
The first foul.
Okay,
Can you replay that for me?
sure. Right there.
That's a card, ref.
Okay, so did you pick it up that time?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But so at the beginning, where he was kicking the ball to the other one, and so it was like the white player beat the red player, and I think that's what kind of ticked the red player off when he stuck over and knocked the white player down, and then the white player came back and hit the red player. So you've got to watch it all the way back to here to see what the temperature is going to be on that play.
Right. Let's just suppose for the sake of argument this is a high temperature match. How are you dealing with this?
Well, I think the referee's proximity is fantastic.
Yeah. Even though he's sitting on the touchline.
Yeah,
Are they doing a duo?
Yeah, that's what I don't know. I couldn't tell from this. I only see the one referee. So don't worry about his positioning so much, but how are you going to if this happens in your match, how do you manage this?
Well, you have to do a
I
hard whistle to get it to kind of snap people into it. And then, I do think the second foul, if you're not going to call the first foul, the second foul is a card.
Okay. Okay. Let's
So
suppose you missed the first one, but if you're reading the game, what are the players' actions telling you?
it's heated.
It's heated, but what's it really telling you? What kind of clues are they giving you?
You blew it. So they're going to take it into their own hands.
yeah, they're
Yeah,
playing
maybe
bodies.
it's possible if you look at this, if you see this on the field, are you thinking to yourself, did I miss something? Because Because what's the body language of the white player telling you? Okay.
I think it speaks a lot when he gets up
He
right
went
here
down,
that
but
he
watch
looks.
his body language. What's his body language doing right now?
Yeah.
I'm going to get him.
Yes.
Card ref.
Okay. So what corner has he just painted you into?
You notice when he first gets up off the ground, his first reflex is to look at the referee, and he
Yep.
sees the referee is not going to help him, so he decides he's going to go handle it.
Yeah.
Right. So as a referee, we've missed that. Okay, so we missed that.
Yeah.
So we're judging what happened after. So how are we handling what happened after?
I think when you're talking to the player, you have to honestly say, hey, something apparently happened there. I missed it. And then talk to them about how they can't, retaliate like that.
Okay.
But I think you go a long way to making them receptive to your talk if you admit that you might have missed it.
Okay, so it's part of the player management thing. Anybody have any other comments? I think it's important that we talk to that player, like Cindy said, and if we recognize a retaliation situation, say, sorry, I missed it, I apologize, but you can't do that. And is anybody going to caution him for that retaliation, or is it just a hard foul in a hot game?
Hard
I,
foul.
I think, go ahead, Kristen.
I would just say hard foul in a hot game because I mean, I'd give him a warning probably, but I mean, if he hasn't had anything since, yeah, he needs to cool down too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm of the opinion that you have to card that one. Otherwise, the rest of the game is a real problem.
Okay, so it's a game management kind of offense for you.
Yeah, I don't think you can forgive the second, knowing even if you knew that you were the cause of the fault in the beginning.
Yeah, that player went right out there to intentionally do that.
Yeah. So, well, good comments. I think we've kind of overrun our time a little bit, but I hope this has been kind of a thought-provoking and sort of stimulating conversation to have because we've heard some good comments today. A lot of them related to game management, and I think that's very important to us for the older division games. So that said, I'm going to turn you back over to Lewis. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Phil. I think we wanted to go into so much depth on each of the situations, which is great. There's a lot of engagement. People can't get enough. We've got another focus discussion in this series in 2 weeks. And I've actually lost track of when my last one is. We have two more scheduled. I've got one coming up. I'll go ahead and name it, even if it's not completely set in stone yet. But with a coach, so we get some dialogue there. We've done those before. That's always been exciting. And then we also have the referee mentor course. So kind of goes mentor, assessor, national referee assessor. So it's a great one to get. It's quick, and it gets you to be equipped to help your region out. Um, so on that note, I'm going to put an end on the recording. Much thanks to Phil, but also to all of you for putting in more time, volunteering yet another evening to bettering yourselves as volunteers. And you are already in the very few percent that volunteer in this program, and then refine that down to those that just can't get enough and keep coming back for more on a given Thursday night. So thank you very much, everybody, for making not only Team3 but AYSO work through your efforts like this.